Okay, Griffith, I'm doing lists.
How you get so big into food of this kind?
Alright, I've never really done a list video before, and I've not done a serious theories video before, but I think it's about time. We're getting near The Last Jedi. I think this is the type of thing you guys might be into. So I'm gonna go over my thoughts on the most common Rey's parentage theories. They're kind of my breakdown on how viable I think the different theories are, and I'll try to keep my own personal biases out of them as best I can, even though I have some very strong feelings about some of them. So these are my top 3 and kind of 4 theories on Rey's parentage in the Star Wars universe. Keep in mind, everything I'm going to talk about is pure conjecture. I read all the Star Wars books. I've been trying to keep up with all the comics, so I'm going to spoil some books, television episodes, but nothing here is going to be an actual spoiler for The Last Jedi. I don't know what's going to happen in it. You have no concern about having anything more than the trailer of The Last Jedi ruined for you in this video. Okay, first theory, Rey Skywalker. Now, I probably subscribe to Rey Skywalker more than any of the others. That's also because it's the one I want. I'm not necessarily sure that translates into the most viable theory. It's probably the most obvious one, for lack of a better word, and I don't mean obvious in that it's clear that it's true, it's just probably the easiest one to come up with, and that is that Rey is Luke's daughter. You know, this idea comes from, we have Han and Leia's child. It's just natural to have a character that we love in Luke, to want him to have a lineage and to have him have a child to kind of pass down that tradition to. But there are some things in the film that lead to this. I read into this more from a visuals perspective than anything else. So if you look at the past 2 Star Wars trilogies, they've started with a Skywalker on a desert planet who's really good at piloting, who's really good at mechanics and repairing things, who has the Force, who grows up basically wearing rags. It feels like she's supposed to look like a Skywalker. It could be that she looks like a Skywalker because she is one. It also could be that Abrams is just playing on themes within Star Wars. I mean, the number one complaint about The Force Awakens is that it copies A New Hope and Star Wars in general too much, and I'm not going to address that complaint. That's not the point of the video, but it does kind of take away from the idea of how Rey looks as evidence for who she is. The most important piece of evidence in the film that Rey is a child of Luke Skywalker comes from the scene where Kylo is interrogating Rey. Kylo's like, you see an island out in the middle of nowhere and you dream about this island sometimes. If I lived in a desert, I would dream about going to an island getaway all the time too. But it is kind of weirdly specific that he describes a place that could very easily be the place where she finds Luke. So is this a case of Luke has been talking to Rey in her dreams and telling her where he is because he wants her to come find him? Now, that's also possible even if they're not related. It just, them being related would make it make a lot more sense. I do like the symmetry of the male child of the female Skywalker and the female child of the male Skywalker in this, like, symmetry. We're gonna rebuild the Force and start the Jedi and Sith over and do this new thing. I get that a lot of people really don't like this theory because they don't like the idea of Luke being the jerk dad that just left Rey on Jakku. From Rey's vision that we see in The Force Awakens, that little blip, I don't think it's clear whether or not she was left voluntarily or if she was left and her family was kidnapped and taken away. All we know is Rey was on Jakku and she was watching a spaceship fly away. She thinks her family is on that spaceship, and understand there's a difference between her thinking her family is on the spaceship and her family being on the spaceship. And I know a lot of people don't like this theory because they just don't like the idea that everyone in Star Wars has to be related. But if you don't like the idea that everyone in Star Wars has to be related, this is not the video for you. Number 2, we have Rey Kenobi. This is possibly my least favorite Star Wars theory in the long history of Star Wars theories I've listened to, so I'm gonna try really hard to keep my personal bias on lockdown. If you have ever wondered if Rey is the daughter of Obi Wan Kenobi, you can't math. Rey could not physically possibly be the daughter of Obi Wan Kenobi because Obi Wan dies in A New Hope. To be fair, the more accurate way to describe this theory is, could Rey be the granddaughter of Obi Wan Kenobi? And it's possible. But understand, the core of this theory is people want Rey to be related to a powerful Force user that we already know, but don't want that person to be Luke. So when you have to get to a theory through a convoluted line of thinking, kind of makes me wonder, are any of the executives going to go through that strange line of thinking? There is one piece of evidence in the film, though, that does point to this. During Rey's Force vision, when she's picked up Luke's lightsaber, she hears Obi Wan say, Rey. I will take that as something of importance. I will say that Obi Wan has used the Force to talk to a lot of people he's not related to, including Yoda. The core of why I have a problem with this theory comes from Star Wars The Clone Wars. So this was the television series that ran on Cartoon Network for a while. It is considered canon. It is the same canon and universe that the films operate in. In this series, we learn that Obi Wan had a young love. There's a character by the name of Satine who's leader of the Mandalorians, and when they were younger, Obi-Wan, as a Jedi Padawan, had been helping her with a conflict on her planet, and it was something that together under high-stress situations for a long period of time, and they fell in love. But Obi-Wan, being the Jedi that he is, he chose his duty to the Jedi Order over his love for Satine. When we see them as much older adults in the Clone Wars, it's clear that they still have a lot of feelings for each other. They are both people who value duty quite a bit. Satine ultimately dies, and Obi-Wan is very heartbroken over it, and I just don't see him having that kind of relationship with anyone else, and I suppose you could argue he wouldn't need that kind of relationship in order to have had a kid, but it doesn't fit Obi-Wan's personality. It might fit Qui-Gon Jinn's. I could see him doing that a lot more, but I'm not really going to give the Rey Jinn theory a bullet point, because at that point you are literally just looking for Jedi who could possibly be the parent of Rey without any movie or book or television evidence whatsoever. I mean, yeah, she could technically be a descendant of Qui-Gon. She could be a descendant of Chancellor Valorum too. I don't think it's gonna happen. The notion to me of Rey being a descendant of Kenobi is we so badly need Rey to be the child of someone we know that we are going to fundamentally change the characterization of a beloved character in order to make it happen. Number 3, Rey Palpatine. Now this theory I like more than Rey Kenobi, and I in fact think it's more likely than Rey Kenobi. I do think it's less likely than Rey Skywalker. Though I say that and there is absolutely no film evidence to support Rey being a Palpatine. I don't think it is likely, but it's something I could see happening at the same time. The only piece of real evidence for this comes from Chuck Wendig's Aftermath trilogy, which if you haven't read it, I highly, highly recommend. Jakku is a really important planet. I know you're told in The Force Awakens time and time again that it's not important and no one likes Jakku and it's this backwater world and why would anyone want to go back there? Have you ever thought about why there was a massive battle over the planet that no one cares about? Have you ever wondered why there would have been such a massive space battle that multiple Star Destroyers would have crashed into the surface of Jakku? Clearly, someone thought this planet was important at some time, and that person was Palpatine. So Palpatine had this base on Jakku. It was a really important planet to him. It's a really important planet to the Empire. I just don't think it's a coincidence that this really powerful Force user was dropped off and left on this important planet. It is not coincidence. It's absolutely destiny at work. Whether or not it's the actions of a mortal who left her there or just the Force making things happen, I don't know. So to that degree, I could almost see the Rey Palpatine theory, but that's only because I could see Palpatine having a lineage, and I know that Palpatine cares about Jakku, and I know that Rey is on Jakku. So I said I had kind of a fourth theory. Unfortunately, I think kind of the fourth theory is the most likely one. Rey is Rey, and her parents don't matter. They either are jerks that left her there, or Rey got stolen from them and they died and they're not around, or something. I think it's really possible that Rey is just Rey, which I know is like the single most boring theory I can think of. The only thing I wouldn't like about that theory is that Rey makes such a big deal about finding her family. To then have her family be not important, I think would be a letdown. But that doesn't mean they couldn't do it in a valuable way. So that's my analysis, breakdown, thoughts on some of the Rey theories that are going on right now. Come join us at Port Haven. We have a whole area just to discuss Rey in with everyone's theories flying around. If there's any other characters you'd like me to address, like some of the stuff about Snoke and that sort of thing, I'd be happy to talk to you about that. Leave a comment below, visit us in Port Haven, and until next time, keep it real and fly casual.
Cooking can be fun.